Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hui Lin Chien. I study perceptual development. So today's the talk will be on the development of other race effect, the first year of life. I'm Hui Lin Chien. Okay, so it is a well-known observation that we know that human babies love to look at faces, and regardless if it is a schematic face or real faces. Okay, but in fact, the very first faces we see are actually also carrying some race information and will be typically our own race. Okay, so studying the development of other race effect, I think it comes up in our yesterday's discussion that we are much better at recognizing our own race faces in other race faces. So by studying this, sorry, I'm speaking too fast than my PowerPoint. Okay, by studying infants' differential processing for the own and other race faces actually provides a very unique window for understanding the dominant form of experience shift, neuroplasticity. Okay. So I think today my talk will be more like a mini review or partial reviews. I'd like to highlight some of the very well representative study in this field. Okay. So I hope to touch three basic questions, but there are more, but I wasn't capable of touch that much question, but at least so I will talk about the ontogeny of the own race bias. So when do infants become sensitive to race? Okay, so that's the first question. And I also like to talk about the developmental pattern. So what's the overall developmental pattern of other race effect in the first year of life? Okay, so what's the main behavioral finding? And third, so I hope to be able to gain some insight about what is the role of experience. I think particularly the experience of own race is necessary for maintaining that reputation, or it actually can do more. Okay, so I think that's the three basic questions. Okay, so actually back in the 80s, the very early developmental studies, they found an onset of other race effect actually in childhood, somewhere between 6 to 8 years. But in these 10 years, there's more and more studies pointing towards a very, very early onset, as early as 3 months. Okay, so this is what we found. So a study by a Britain group, Kelly et al., they use this preferential looking paradigm. Preferential looking paradigm, if you don't quite understand, but I think you understand in a minute. So when the Caucasian faces are paired with different race faces, and 3 months old Caucasian infants will spontaneously look at the Caucasian faces. But for newborn, they wouldn't do that yet. Okay, and a very parallel result was found in Chinese infants. So this is saying that at very early on, it looks like the 3 months old infants already show some preference for the faces of their own race. Okay, so it's like a very early indicator for the sensitivity for races. I think that this is a very well-cited study, and was, it seems like this is the earliest age we can find. Okay. All right. So there's another very well-cited study also by the same group that is saying that the other race effect ORE seems to emerge between 6 and 9 months. So they use a slightly different paradigm. So use habituation paradigm. So if you first show infants a face, habituate them, like the one on the top. So let them look at them many times so they will remember that. And later, you show infants a pair of faces, like in this way, in which one, this is actually the same person, can you see that? But with a slight orientation shift. And this is a completely different one, can you see that? Okay, good. Maybe better than infants. Good. Okay, so then we'll see if infant will habituate to the normal person. Okay. So this is what they found. Very interesting result. So they test 3, 6, and 9 months old, and they found 3 months old are the best. So they can recognize their own race face and also the faces of the other 3 races. But at 6 months, they start to lose some of the other race faces ability. So they can still recognize Caucasian faces and Chinese faces, but they start to lose the other 2. And at 9 months, they become the most narrow one. So they can only recognize their own race faces. Okay, Okay, so this is pretty much the most dominant view in this field, a very well cited study. Okay, so how to explain this phenomena? So they use a concept called the perceptual narrowing, I think, which is borrowed from phonetic discrimination study. So it is as if the initial representation for faces and is more broadly tuned. It's not selected for any other races, but a continued experience with own race face and a lack of experience for other races will lead to this narrowing process. Okay, so do you like this explanation? You do? I don't. It's actually very cool. So when I start working on it, I try to replicate, but I can't. But let me step back. So it sounds kind of, it's a possible explanation, but when you think again, there's some part it doesn't quite reasonable. Then I will show you why. Okay. So first, so there are some challenges for the narrowing view. So first of all, if we study, we know the visual development. There is a very substantial development from newborn. So for the first year of life, there's a substantial improvement in our visual capacity. So basically, it's just conflict with the general trend of visual development. So we're supposed to see better and better, be able to see more and more detail. But how come a pair of face, a 3 months old can recognize, can discriminate, but they become not able to do that at 9 months. Okay, so I think that's the basic challenge. And also, a more closely related to some of the finding that's directly conflicting with the result are. So there are actually also other study, not a lot, including my own, actually showing that 3 months old infants already exhibit. It's not like they can discriminate all races. Already exhibit some differential ability, usually a little better ability for discriminating their own race faces. For example, so let me show you this study. So this particular study by Heider et al., they use this morph face paradigm. So actually, these faces are morphed between these two faces. So for Caucasian infants, they will be able to recognize these 100% Caucasian faces and these 70% Caucasian mixed with 30% Asian face. For Caucasian 3 months old infants, and this amount of difference is enough for them to tell them apart. Okay, but they cannot do that for the same equivalent manipulation in the Asian Caucasian. Okay, so you already see. So there's a smaller J, let's say that. It's a much larger J. Okay, at 3 months. Okay. So I'm going to show you another challenge for the narrowing view. So this is my own study. Okay, so this study, in order to be able to examine if infants show differential improvement for the face processability for own versus other race face, so I try to devise and create a more comprehensive set of tasks that allow you different levels of task difficulty. So we can see if the ability will get to improve or not. Okay, so this is what I do. So I take 4 ethnic groups. So they are Taiwanese, Caucasian, African, and Philippine faces. And so this column are the familiarized, or the face for them to start with to study. Okay, so the familiarized face. And I created 4 different kinds of manipulation, or 4 different kinds of novel faces to test their ability. So let's look at the first one. So in the easy condition, it's really easy because, can you see that? So it's actually change identity. So we change it to a different person, okay? And for the medium condition, it is actually the same person, but with the pair of eyes being replaced. So you have to have a much finer discriminability to be able to tell the difference. So that's for medium condition. And for hard condition, it is getting harder. It's the same face of the same person, but with the eye spacing wider. Can you see that? Okay, so it's getting harder and harder indeed. And for the hard mouth condition, again, it's the same person, but with only the mouth move up. And it turns out the hard mouth condition is really hard. It's really hard even for adults. Okay, so we use this set of stimuli to start with our study. So if you Okay, so I think you will understand the manipulation in Vietnamese. So just pretend to be the subject. Okay, so this is. Am I doing too fast? Okay, can you tell me which one is the novel one? Oh, good job. Very good. And where can you see where is the difference? Yes, very good. So this is Asian median condition. Asian male median condition. Okay, so you see that the pair of eyes is different from the original one. Okay. So with this set of stimuli, so we first test our adults. We want to make sure that our manipulation is valid. Okay. So we test our adults. So the data are here: Taiwanese, Philippine face, Caucasian, African, and the 4 different colors denotes the 4 different manipulation. So you can see a nice step down of the results. So the easy is indeed very easy. It's almost reaching 100%. And the median condition maybe drop about 10% or so. So you do see that the accuracy decrease as the stimulus difficulty increase. And also the hard eye condition is easier than the hard mouth condition. The hard mouth condition is near 60, but it's getting too hard. Okay, so with this in mind, so then we select a subset of that stimuli to use for infants. Okay, so we pick 3 ethnic groups: Taiwanese, Caucasian, and Philippine. The 3, and we say the easy condition, medium, and hard eye condition. So we drop that hard mouth condition. Okay. So we test the 4, 6, and 9 months old infants, and we completely within subject design. So meaning that each infant have to view 3 races with all the conditions. Okay. So. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot. It's all Taiwanese infants. So Taiwanese face will be all race. Caucasian will be other race. Philippine I call you near race so far. It's an interesting case. Okay, thank you for asking. So pretend to be my baby again. Okay, all right. So for infants, so we'll first familiarize infant for a face for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. And another 10 seconds. Okay, all right. Okay, so here, I'm sure you know which one is different. Okay, so here we do the codings. So infant will look at the faces. If they are 2, they're likely to look back and forth. But typically, if infant will know that this one he didn't see it before, this one is a familiar one, and even will typically spend a significantly longer looking time at this one. Okay, so this is, but if we see that, we will call there's a novelty preference. Okay. So how much time do I have? Oh, 2 minutes? Oh, okay. Okay, so I guess I have to skip this. That's a very good baby. Okay. Okay, I just skip that. So let me show you the result. Okay, so Taiwanese, Philippine, Caucasian condition, and the y-axis the delta looking time. So I use the time infant spent on the novel stimulus minus the familiar stimulus. So that's the y-axis. So if it is positive, it means there is a novelty preference. Negative, familiar preference. 0, no preference, no discrimination. So here you can see the only thing that's significant that was the Taiwanese easy condition. Okay, for 4 months olds. And so it'll be easy for you to understand the 6 and 9 months old infants data. So 6 months old, they start to see some pretty good improvement. So they can recognize easy face of Taiwanese and also Caucasian easy faces. And for all race condition, they can further progress to the medium condition. That's quite remarkable. And 9 months is, I think they do pretty, about the same for the 6 months olds. Okay. All right, so let me put a summary table. Okay, so I found a very different data pattern compared to Canada's et al. So at 4 months is actually the only condition that infant can recognize is the face of their own race, and it's an easy condition, so a complete identity change. So infants show a successful recognition, and their ability to process own race faces will improve from 4 to 9. Okay, improved. Okay, and the recognition for other race faces seems to emerge later, at least 2 months later, at about 6 months, and it does not improve as much. Okay, so this is pretty much maybe is where that experience comes in. So because infant has more experience with all race faces, so they'll be able to facilitate this and fine tune. But for the Caucasian face, they seem to stay at the basic level. I think that's the main finding. Okay, so our results challenge the perceptual narrowing hypothesis and favors the learning hypothesis. When I say narrowing and learning, I'm referring to this very old Garlick's model about the possible effect of perceptual experience for a partially developed system. If it is for maintenance, if the repetition necessary for the repetition, then we will call that maintenance hypothesis. But it looks like, I think, the role of our own race experience more like a facilitative effect. Okay, how much time do I have? Oh, okay, all right. So I'll skip this one. Hope you will ask me questions. So let me come to the conclusion. Okay, so in terms of our first question, I think we're pretty sure, or at least we have more solid evidence that infants are sensitive to race at 3 months. But the developmental pattern for other races, they're still inconclusive. As you see, there are 2 different kinds of data. But however, both data suggest that there's something different. There's something happening between 3 and 9 months. You do see a differential discriminability for own and other race faces. Okay. Lastly, the role of experience seems like it's more like a facilitation and not maintenance. Okay. Thank you for your attention.